All right, here's the deal. If you are going to be out there and, outside doing a little bit of hiking, walking around, you should know, of course, this is a particularly bad, I am told, season for ticks. And, they can be dangerous. Outside of saying we get this warning every year. Yeah, it can be dangerous. So we thought we'd try to get you caught up on this. Dr. Chris Labos, of course, joins us from time to time. He can be heard, by the way, 8:10 Sunday mornings on CJAD on Weekends with Ken. So if you like what you hear here, you'll get more of it on Sunday mornings. Dr. Labos, let's start. First of all, thanks for being here. And let's start with the tick problem this year. Is it, in fact, significantly worse than in years past from what you can remember?
Well, sort of. I mean, if you look at the numbers, there has been a lot of fluctuations over the past few years, and some of it was because of COVID in 2020. So that real dip that we saw in 2020 probably was because people changed their behaviors drastically during the pandemic. But even outside of COVID, there is a little bit of an up and down in the numbers. So clearly, if you zoom out and look back 20 years ago compared to today, yes, there is more Lyme disease, and that's largely being driven by the fact that we have a warmer climate, and ticks that wouldn't normally survive the Canadian winters are now surviving the slightly milder Canadian winters. And so that's why you've seen a general global trend for an increase. From year to year, it's a little harder to draw firm conclusions because you have seen these ups and downs, and there have been up and down years before. So we'll see, do things stabilize at a certain point, or do we see a continuous upward trend? It looks as if things are relatively stable, but it's very hard to know because, frankly, the year and the season isn't over yet, so we don't know really how bad it might end up being.
Okay. I wondered how much of it also had to do with the fact that we are more aware, arguably, than ever before about Lyme disease. It seems to me like we hear about Lyme disease all the time now. So does that play a big role? We're just more tuned in?
Yeah, and I think that's part of it, too. And again, this feeds into itself. I mean, there was very little testing for Lyme disease 20 years ago because none of the ticks in Montreal or in Canada, frankly, had the bacteria that caused Lyme disease.
Right.
But as you're seeing more and more of it, you're seeing more awareness and more testing for it. And so you are seeing these things sort of feed into each other. And yes, every disease, regardless of what disease you're talking about, the more you test for it, the more you raise awareness, the more you see cases go up. So that doesn't mean necessarily that the disease is getting worse or changing. It just means you're diagnosing and picking up more cases.
Can more awareness lead to more prevention, I guess, in a way, because we're more tuned into it, so maybe we're being more careful? And if that is the case, what do we need to know?
Well, I think the most important thing is to avoid the tick bites. And we often talk about Lyme disease, but of course ticks can transmit many other different types of infections independent of Lyme disease. But the same basic rules apply, which is protect yourself. If you're going to go hiking, especially if you're going hiking in the forest where there's sort of dense forestry, you really want to not have exposed skin. You want to cover up your legs, cover up your arms so that ticks can't latch onto you. You want to use bug spray to do that, to protect yourself from ticks, with that second layer of protection. And when you're done your activity, when you're back home, you want to check to make sure that there's no tick latched onto your skin, because if you can remove that tick within the first 24 hours of it having latched onto you, that's not enough time for it to transmit the bacteria into your system. So you can prevent you won't prevent the tick bite, but you can prevent the infection if you remove the tick promptly before it's had time to actually infect you with the bacteria that's inside of it.
Okay, but wait. So let's say you get that tick bite. You don't notice it perhaps till you get home, and maybe it's been an hour or two. Does it matter? Is the idea get it off as quickly as you can? And what do? Just toss it in the garbage, flush it down the toilet? Does it matter? Do you need to have it somewhere taken for evaluation? What do you do?
So you can save it if you can. Researchers are interested in studying these to see the prevalence of how many ticks actually have the Borrelia burgdorferi bacteria, the bacteria that causes Lyme disease. Because it's not every tick that has the bacteria, right? So you just have to have sort of the bad luck to have been bitten by a tick that had that bacteria living inside of it. So there are research programs where they will collect the ticks to study them. So that definitely is a thing.
It sounds a bit like, I'm thinking of mosquitoes, that you can get, the fever, you can get the malaria, like there's different things at different mosquitoes. So it's kind of the luck of the draw in a way.
It is, and that's the thing, right? Not every mosquito has malaria in it. And in fact, no mosquitoes in Canada have malaria because, and again, so here's if you want to go back historically, in North America, particularly in the southern United States, malaria was a huge, huge problem. But then because of a series of public health interventions, there's no more malaria in the United States. There's still malaria in parts of Africa, obviously, but not so much in the United States. So you can get rid of a bacteria if you have the proper public health response to it. And so one of the things is ticks are always going to be around. What you want to worry about is how many of the ticks actually, what percentage of the ticks actually have the bacteria that cause Lyme disease or anything else, and that's what the research is really focused on. So, take basic steps to avoid getting a tick bite to begin with. But even if you do get bitten by a tick, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get Lyme disease. To get diagnosed with Lyme disease, you have to be tested for Lyme disease, and there's a series of serological tests that you can do for that you would do if you went to the hospital with symptoms.
But can I just ask, so if you do get bitten, though, let's assume you have that bite and you get it off you relatively quickly. Should you get tested anyway, or are you just okay in the clear if you don't have any kind of a rash appearing? It just, like any other bite?
It's debatable. I mean, if you're very confident that you got that tick off quickly, most people would say there's probably no value in being tested because it's not enough time for the bacteria to be transmitted. But if you're not certain, and that's what often happens, people are not entirely sure how long it's been there. They're not sure if they noticed it or not. If there's a doubt, you test. That's why tests exist. And if the test comes back negative, then you're like, okay, well, you got bitten by a tick, but you didn't end up getting Lyme disease.
Okay, and I understand, like, some animals can carry ticks and stuff, so I think we immediately think, we'll check your ankles and spots that might have been exposed, but, I mean, ostensibly, they can bite you anywhere, right?
Yeah, they can. They just have to be exposed. Now, your legs are probably the most logical because they're going to be living in the tall grasses and sort of latching onto you if you go out hiking in shorts. I mean, dogs in particular are at high risk for getting ticks because they're rolling around naked on the ground, which is presumably something most of our listeners are not going to be doing. Well, so for human beings...
Possibly speak for yourself, Chris, but okay.
We assume. Right, but so in theory, it could happen anywhere. The reality is it's usually on your extremities, your legs, to a little bit your arms as well, because that's the thing that's going to come in contact with the ticks.
Can I just ask, to your point now, what happens if you're out there with your pet and your pet does this stuff? A whole different set of problems if it is like a dog that gets a tick?
Well, no, I mean, because the treatment for Lyme disease is antibiotics. It's a bacteria, right? So you just need antibiotics. Now, you need a fairly long course of very specific antibiotics. So it's not like a 5-day course of Zithromax when you have bronchitis, but it is treatable with antibiotics, and that's the thing. It's one of the reasons why people talk about the diagnosis of Lyme disease. And the importance is because if you catch it and you treat it, you essentially cure the person. It's when you get these chronic infections that are problematic, and we haven't even gotten into the whole issue of people being diagnosed with Lyme disease using inappropriate testing, which is a big, big problem in the United States especially.
Inappropriate testing?
Oh, yeah. There are unscrupulous people out there that give people a diagnosis of Lyme disease even though they actually don't have it, and they use unvalidated tests. It's a whole issue.
Now, I do understand, though, that Quebec pharmacists now, in those areas where you're most likely to come in contact with a tick who may be carrying Lyme disease, they can give you treatment now. You don't necessarily even need to see your doctor first. You can go get treatment if you suspect it. Did you hear that, too?
I'll be honest with you. You're breaking that news to me. I wasn't aware of that. But, I mean, it does make sense. I mean, the treatment is fairly straightforward. It is a course of antibiotics, and, pharmacists do have prescribing power for these types of situations. And in a scenario where a lot of people don't have a family doctor, well, we're going to have to start coming up with creative solutions for stuff like this, because it's true. Not every problem requires a medical visit to solve it. And if you know that there's a lot of Lyme disease in a particular region, like in the S3 or the Montérégie, no, it's not an unreasonable thing to do. The worst case is you get an inappropriate course of antibiotics, which is not great, but for you as an individual, it's probably not going to have any long-term implications. It is going to contribute to antibiotic resistance in the long term, so you have to balance the risks and the benefits of that.
All right. Dr. Labos, thanks so much for the time. Appreciate it. We'll see you around rolling on the grass.
Okay.
Take care now. All right.
Thanks,
there you go. Dr. Chris Labos. Again, Sundays he's here 8:10 in the morning, on weekends with Ken.